Rebuild yourself. A journey to self-discovery. Have you ever stood in front of a mirror and felt like a stranger was staring back at you? That moment when you realize the person you've become isn't quite the person you imagined you'd be. Take a breath. Let that thought sink in for a moment. You're not alone in this feeling. Every day, millions of people wake up feeling disconnected from themselves, going through motions that feel more like someone else's script than their own story. But what if I told you that this moment of recognition, this uncomfortable feeling of disconnect, is actually the first step towards something extraordinary? Imagine holding a blank canvas in your hands. That's what rebuilding yourself is about. It's not about erasing who you are, but rather about rediscovering and reimagining who you can become. Think of it as renovating a beloved old house. You're not tearing it down. You're uncovering its hidden potential, room by room, layer by layer. Let me share a story that might resonate with you. Sarah, a brilliant corporate executive, seemed to have it all. The corner office, the impressive title, the lifestyle many dreamed of. But one ordinary Tuesday morning, as she was rushing her kids to school, her 7-year-old daughter asked a simple question. "Mommy, when did you forget how to smile?" That question hit her like a thunderbolt. When had she forgotten? When had the joy of life been replaced by endless to-do lists and meetings? When had she started living someone else's version of success? What if I told you that Sarah's story, and perhaps your own feelings of disconnect, isn't a sign that something's wrong, but rather an invitation to something remarkable? Throughout this book, we're going to explore the art of rebuilding yourself, but not in the way you might expect. We're not going to focus on quick fixes or temporary solutions. Instead, we're going to dive deep into what it truly means to reconnect with yourself and create a life that feels authentically yours. Think about this. What would it feel like to wake up every morning and recognize not just the face in the mirror, but the soul behind the eyes? To feel aligned with your choices, your path, your purpose? Let's break down this journey into 3 fundamental truths that will guide our exploration. 1. The mirror truth. Understanding that who you are today is not who you're destined to remain. 2. The river principle. Learning to flow with change rather than fight against it. 3. The builder's wisdom. Recognizing that rebuilding yourself is a craft, not a race. Think of me as your companion on this journey. Not someone who's going to tell you who to be, but rather someone who's going to help you uncover who you already are beneath the layers of should be and supposed to. As we begin this journey together, I want you to remember something crucial. This process isn't about becoming a different person. It's about becoming more authentically yourself. It's about peeling away the layers of expectations, shoulds, and societal pressures to reveal the extraordinary person you were always meant to be. Are you ready to begin this transformation? Are you ready to meet yourself again, perhaps for the first time? Let's start with a simple truth. The fact that you're here, listening to these words, means you've already taken the first and often hardest step, recognizing the need for change. That recognition, that willingness to look deeper, is more powerful than you might realize. Chapter 1. The Mirror Truth. Rediscovering your authentic self. When was the last time you truly looked at yourself? Not just the surface reflection, but deep into your own eyes, seeking the person you used to be, the dreams you used to have. Think back to when you were a child. Remember that sense of limitless possibility, that pure, unfiltered joy of simply being you. Somewhere along the way, many of us lose touch with that authentic self. We become buried under layers of expectations, responsibilities, and other people's dreams. Take James, a talented musician who always dreamed of composing film scores. By day, he sat in a cubicle, crunching numbers for a major accounting firm. It's the responsible choice, he'd tell himself. But every time he heard a powerful movie soundtrack, something inside him ached. That ache. That's your authentic self trying to break free. What would happen if you gave yourself permission to listen to that inner voice again? What if, just for a moment, you set aside all the shoulds and musts that have accumulated over the years? Your authentic self isn't lost. It's just waiting to be rediscovered. Think of it like a radio signal that's always broadcasting. You just need to tune in to the right frequency. The static you're hearing, That's society's expectations, other people's opinions, and your own self-doubt trying to drown out your inner truth. Consider this. What activities make you lose track of time? When do you feel most alive, most connected to yourself? These aren't idle questions. They're breadcrumbs leading back to your authentic self. Let me share another story. Maya, a successful lawyer, always felt something was missing despite her achievements. One day, while organizing her garage, she found her old sketchbook from college. As she flipped through the pages, tears began to flow. She hadn't drawn in years, convinced that art was just a hobby, not a real career. But in that moment, surrounded by her old drawings, she felt more herself than she had in decades. That's the power of reconnecting with your authentic self. It's not always about making dramatic changes. Sometimes it's about creating space for who you truly are to emerge. Chapter 2. Breaking Through the Fog. Understanding where you are now. Have you ever tried to navigate through thick fog? That's what life can feel like when you're disconnected from yourself. You know you're moving, but you're not quite sure if you're heading in the right direction. Today, we're going to start clearing that fog, step by step. Think about where you are right now. Not your physical location, but your place in life. Are you walking a path you consciously chose, or did you simply follow the breadcrumbs of expectations laid out before you? There's no judgment in this question, just curiosity. Let me tell you about Michael. He was 45 when he realized he'd spent his entire adult life collecting achievements like badges. The prestigious degree, the executive position, the luxury car. I did everything right, he told me, his voice heavy with realization. So why do I feel so empty? What Michael discovered, and what you might recognize, is that sometimes we're so busy becoming what we think we should be, we forget to ask ourselves what we want to be. Take a moment. Let's do something different right now. Close your eyes. Yes, really close them. Take a deep breath. Now ask yourself, if no one else's opinion mattered, if success wasn't measured in dollars or titles, what would you be doing with your life? Interesting how that question feels, isn't it? Consider Lisa's story. A single mother of two, she'd built her life around being responsible. Every decision was calculated, safe, secure. But each night, after putting her kids to bed, she'd find herself drawn to her laptop, writing stories, little worlds of imagination she never shared with anyone. It's just a silly hobby, she'd say. But was it? Or was it her authentic self trying to speak through the noise of daily life? Here's a powerful truth. Understanding where you're now doesn't mean you're stuck there. Think of it like GPS. You need to know your current location before you can plot a course to where you want to go. Let's talk about the fog itself for a moment. It's made up of different elements. Expectations we've internalized from family and society. Fear of disappointing others or ourselves. The comfort of familiar patterns, even when they don't serve us. The stories we tell ourselves about who we should be. What if I told you that this fog, as thick as it might seem, is just temporary? That clarity is not only possible, but natural when you give yourself permission to seek it. Chapter 3. The Art of Gentle Unraveling. Think of your life as a tapestry. Over the years, you've woven in threads of different colors, some chosen by you, others handed to you by circumstances, society, or other people's expectations. Today, we're going to learn the art of gentle unraveling, not to undo your life, but to understand which threads truly belong to your story. Remember the first time you realized you had a choice, not just about what to wear or eat, but about who you could become? For some of us, that realization hasn't fully happened yet. We're still living in the shadow of should rather than the light of could. Consider David's story. A gifted teacher who found himself in corporate training because it paid better. I'm doing fine, he'd say, but his eyes would light up when he talked about his years teaching high school science. One day, a colleague asked him, when was the last time you felt truly excited about your work? The question stopped him in his tracks. What if we asked you the same question? When was the last time you felt truly excited about your path? Not just content, not just okay, but genuinely excited? Chapter 4. The Power of Your Inner Compass. Have you ever felt that gentle tug in your heart, That whisper in your mind telling you something isn't quite right. Like a compass needle drawn to true north, there's a part of you that always knows which way to go, even when you're trying your hardest not to listen. Let me share something with you. Last week, I spoke with Anna, a talented artist who spent 15 years climbing the corporate ladder. Every morning, she told me, her voice barely above a whisper, I'd stand in front of my closet, putting on my suit like armor, trying to ignore that voice inside that kept asking, is this really you? What if that voice isn't a distraction to be silenced, but a guide trying to lead you home? Think about it for a moment. When was the last time you made a decision that felt completely, undeniably right? Not because it made logical sense, not because it looked good on paper, but because something deep inside you simply knew. Your inner compass isn't just about big life decisions. It's there in the small moments too. It's that feeling you get when you're doing something you love, and time seems to disappear. It's that spark of energy when you're on the right path, that sense of peace when you're being true to yourself. Consider Thomas's story, a brilliant software engineer who always felt most alive when teaching others. During team meetings, his eyes would light up when explaining complex concepts to colleagues. At weekend coding boot camps, he'd lose track of time helping beginners understand basic principles. His inner compass was pointing clearly toward education, but for years he ignored it. I can't be a teacher, he'd tell himself. I make triple that salary in tech. But here's what Thomas discovered, and what you might recognize in your own life. The cost of ignoring your inner compass isn't just measured in dollars. It's measured in joy, in energy, in that deep sense of satisfaction that comes from living authentically. What has your inner compass been trying to tell you? What direction has it been pointing while you've been busy looking the other way? Sometimes our inner compass gets buried under layers of should and must and what will people think. Like a delicate instrument covered in dust, it needs to be carefully uncovered, cleaned, and recalibrated. Picture yourself standing at a crossroads. One path leads toward what you think you should do. It's well lit, clearly marked, with signposts of social approval all along the way. The other path leads toward what your heart is calling you to do. It might be dimmer, less defined, but something in you stirs when you look that way. Which path would you choose if no one else was watching? Maria, a successful accountant, spent years ignoring her inner compasses pulled toward working with children. It's not practical, she'd say. I have responsibilities. But every time she volunteered at her local youth center, she felt that familiar tug. One day, while calculating another company's profits, she realized something profound. She was using her talent for numbers to track other people's dreams while ignoring her own. Your inner compass speaks in many ways. That surge of energy when you're on the right track. The heaviness in your chest when you're compromising your values. The quiet excitement when you think about what could be. The peaceful certainty when you're being true to yourself. Think about the last time you felt truly aligned, when your actions matched your inner truth. What are you doing? Who are you being in that moment? Chapter 5. Building your foundation. What if I told you that the ground you're standing on right now, the very foundation of your life, isn't as solid as you think? Not because it's weak, but because you might be building on someone else's blueprint. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture yourself as a house. Are your walls built with your own dreams, or are they constructed from expectations handed to you by others? Are your rooms filled with what truly matters to you, or cluttered with should-haves and must-dos? Let me tell you about Robert. On paper, his foundations seem perfect. Prestigious law degree, partner at a top firm, the kind of success story parents tell their children about. But late at night, when the office was empty and the city quiet, he'd find himself drawing. Simple sketches at first, then elaborate designs. Architecture, his first love, abandoned for a more practical path. I've built my whole life on someone else's dream, he told me, his voice heavy with realization. How do I even begin to build my own? Here's the truth about foundations. They're not just about strength. They're about authenticity. Think about the strongest buildings you know. They don't fight against their natural environment. They work with it. Your life should be the same way. What if your perceived weaknesses are actually trying to tell you something about your true foundation? Like Sarah, a scattered creative who spent years trying to force herself into rigid corporate structures, only to discover that her fluid thinking style was perfect for innovative problem solving. Ask yourself, what parts of your life feel like you're constantly fighting against your nature? Where do you feel like you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole? Building a true foundation starts with honest questions. What energizes you, even when you're tired? What could you talk about for hours without getting bored? What makes you lose track of time? What would you do even if you never got paid for it? Notice how different these questions feel from the usual. What should I do with my life? They're not about shooting yourself into a box. They're about discovering the ground you're naturally meant to build upon. Consider Marina's story. Everyone called her too sensitive, a liability in her high-pressure sales job. But when she started listening to that sensitivity instead of fighting it, she realized it gave her an incredible ability to understand others' needs. Today, she's a successful therapist, building on the very foundation she once tried to deny. Your true foundation isn't built in a day. It's not about dramatic gestures or complete life overhauls. It's about small, honest moments of choosing what's truly right for you. It's about laying one authentic brick at a time. Think about the moments when you feel most like yourself. Not the polished, perfect version you show to the world, but your real, raw, authentic self. Those moments are showing you glimpses of your true foundation. With everything you thought was wrong with you is actually trying to point you toward what's right. What if your struggles aren't signs of weakness, but signals that you're building on the wrong foundation? Remember, a beautiful house built on the wrong foundation will always feel shaky. But a simple structure built on authentic ground will weather any storm. Today, right now, you have a choice. Will you continue building on borrowed ground, or will you have the courage to dig deeper and find your own solid earth? Chapter 6. The Quiet Revolution. Embracing change from within. Have you ever watched sunrise? That moment when darkness slowly, imperceptibly, gives way to light? Change, real change, often happens just like that. Not in dramatic flashes, but in quiet moments of choosing differently. Let me share something with you about Claire. Every morning for 10 years, she'd sit in traffic for 2 hours, clutching her steering wheel, telling herself this was just how life had to be. Success meant sacrifice, right? But one morning, something shifted. Maybe it was the way the sunlight hit her rearview mirror, or maybe it was just time. She asked herself a simple question. What if there's another way? That question, that tiny spark of possibility, can change everything. Think about water for a moment. It doesn't fight its way through rock with force. It slowly, persistently, finds its path. Your transformation can be like that too. Not a violent uprooting, but a gentle, unstoppable flow toward who you're meant to be. When Daniel first realized he needed to change, he thought it meant throwing away everything he'd built. I have to quit my job, move cities, start fresh, he told me, panic edging his voice. But real change doesn't always require such dramatics. Sometimes, it starts with something as simple as giving yourself permission to dream again. What dreams have you tucked away so carefully that you've almost forgotten where you put them? Here's a truth that might surprise you. Change doesn't require you to become a different person. It asks you to become more fully yourself. Like a plant turning toward sunlight, you already know which way to grow. You just need to trust that inner wisdom. Consider these moments. When you catch yourself saying, someday, when you feel that flutter of excitement about a possibility. When you glimpse a version of yourself you've been too afraid to claim. When you know, deep down, that you're ready for more. Each of these is a doorway to transformation. Not the loud, showy kind that demands attention, but the quiet kind that builds momentum with every small choice. Jennifer was a master of these small choices. A single mother working 2 jobs, she couldn't make dramatic changes. But every night, she'd spend 15 minutes working on her novel. Just 15 minutes, she'd say. Anyone can find 15 minutes. 3 years later, those 15-minute chunks had become her first published book. What 15 minutes are you waiting to claim? Here's something most people won't tell you about change. It's not about forcing yourself into a new shape. It's about removing the constraints that have been keeping you from your natural form. like a sculptor who doesn't create the statue, but rather removes everything that isn't the statue. Your transformation is about uncovering rather than becoming. Think about that for a moment. What if everything you need is already within you? What if change isn't about adding more, but about letting go of what's not truly yours? Mark spent years trying to become more extroverted because he thought leadership required it. In quiet moments, though, he'd feel exhausted from pretending. His transformation began not when he tried to change himself, but when he finally embraced his thoughtful, introspective nature. Today, he leads differently, not from the front with loud speeches, but from beside with careful listening and deep insight. Your revolution doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. Sometimes, the most profound changes whisper rather than shout. They happen in the moment you say no to something that doesn't align with your values. The quiet morning when you choose to start your day differently. The gentle way you begin speaking to yourself with kindness. The small decisions that honor who you truly are. Chapter 7. The Art of Unlearning. Breaking Free from Old Stories. Have you ever watched a child draw? They don't worry about getting it perfect. They don't erase and start over. They simply create, free from the stories about what art should look like. Somewhere along the way, we lost that freedom. We learned to judge, to doubt, to second guess. Today, we're going to talk about unlearning. Think about the stories you carry. I'm not creative enough. I'm too old to start over. This is just how life is. Who gave you these stories? More importantly, are you ready to write new ones? Meet Peter. For 30 years, he believed he wasn't good with people because his fourth-grade teacher called him shy. This story shaped everything: his career choices, his relationships, his dreams. Then one day, his 5-year-old niece looked up at him and said, "Uncle Peter, you tell the best stories." In that moment, the old story cracked. What stories are you ready to crack open? Here's something fascinating about beliefs. They create their own evidence. When Sandra believed she wasn't a morning person, she found proof everywhere: her tiredness, her grumpiness, her struggle to start the day. But when she questioned his story, just for a moment, something shifted. She didn't become a different person overnight, but she created space for a new possibility. Let's try something different right now. Think of a limitation you've accepted about yourself. Got it. Now ask yourself, what if the opposite were true? What if you're actually more capable than you've allowed yourself to believe? Unlearning isn't about forcing yourself to think positively. It's about questioning the assumptions you've never questioned. Like cleaning old windows, you're not creating new light. You're just removing what's blocking it. Consider these moments of potential unlearning. When you catch yourself saying, "I could never." When you automatically dismiss an opportunity. When you find yourself living on autopilot. When you use phrases like, "That's just how I am." Each of these is an invitation to question, to explore, to unlearn. Maria was a master of "I'm not good with money" until she realized this story came from watching her parents struggle when she was young. It wasn't her truth. It was an inherited belief. The moment she saw this, everything changed. She didn't become a financial expert overnight, but she stopped seeing money as her enemy. What beliefs have you inherited that might not actually be yours? Here's a powerful truth about unlearning. It doesn't require you to figure everything out at once. It simply asks you to be willing to question, to wonder, to stay curious about who you might be beyond your familiar stories. Remember, every expert was once a beginner. Every confident person once doubted. Every new story starts with questioning an old one. Your turn to wonder. What if your limitations are just stories waiting to be rewritten? What if your past experiences are lessons, not definitions? What if everything you think is holding you back is actually preparing you to move forward? Chapter 8. The Quiet Power of Small Victories. Have you ever watched a garden grow? Not the dramatic before and after photos, but the daily, almost invisible progress. One tiny leaf unfurling, a single bud forming, roots quietly stretching deeper into the soil. Your transformation works the same way. Let me tell you about Rebecca. She used to believe that change had to be dramatic. A complete life overhaul, a fresh start, a clean break. "I'll start on Monday," she'd say, planning another total transformation that would inevitably fade by Wednesday. Then, one day, she tried something different. Instead of promising to meditate for an hour, she sat quietly for just 3 minutes. 3 minutes, you might ask. What could that possibly change? Everything, as it turns out. Think about climbing a mountain. From the bottom, the summit seems impossible. But no one climbs a mountain in a single leap. They take one step, then another, then another. Each step might seem insignificant, but each one takes you higher than you were before. David learned this lesson in an unexpected way. After 20 years of saying, "I'm not a writer," he started small, just 50 words a day. Not a novel, not even a proper story, just 50 words. It feels like nothing, he told me. But nothing has changed everything. A year later, those 50-word chunks had become a collection of short stories published in local magazines. What 50 words are you waiting to write? Here's a truth about transformation that most people miss. It's not the size of the action that matters. It's the consistency of the direction. Like water dripping on a stone, small actions, repeated with patience and purpose, can create profound changes. Consider these moments of quiet victory. The morning you choose water instead of coffee. The pause before responding with your old pattern. The 5 minutes of reading before bed. The gentle no to something that doesn't serve you. Each seems small, almost insignificant, but together they create the melody of your transformation. Sarah discovered this when healing from burnout. Instead of dramatic gestures, she started with one promise to herself: to step outside for 3 minutes every day. Just 3 minutes. Some days, 3 minutes became 30. Other days, it was just 3. But she kept her promise, and slowly, something shifted. Not just in her schedule, but in her relationship with herself. What 3-minute promise could you make to yourself today? Here's something powerful about small victories. They're not just about the action itself. They're about proving to yourself that you can trust your own word. Each time you follow through on a tiny promise to yourself, you rebuild trust with the most important person in your life. You. Think about trust for a moment. It's not built through grand gestures, but through small, consistent acts of showing up. Your relationship with yourself works the same way. Michael learned this while rebuilding his life after depression. Everyone wanted me to make big changes, he shared. But what saved me was deciding each morning to make my bed. Just that. One small act of caring for my space, for myself. It became my anchor, my daily reminder that I could do hard things. Your transformation doesn't need to be Instagram-worthy to be meaningful. In fact, the most powerful changes often happen in moments no one else sees. The quiet decision to pause before reacting. The small shift in how you talk to yourself. The moment you choose curiosity over judgment. The gentle return to your breath when anxiety rises. Chapter 9. The Symphony of Self-Trust, Building Momentum. Have you ever noticed how an orchestra begins? Not with a dramatic crash of cymbals, but with that quiet moment when the instruments tune to each other. One note, finding its truth, then another joining in harmony. That's how lasting change happens. One true note at a time. Let me tell you about Marcus. Every morning, he'd look in the mirror and see all the times he'd let himself down. The unfinished projects, the abandoned resolutions, the broken promises to himself. How can I trust myself, he asked me, when I have such a long history of giving ups? What if giving up wasn't the failure you think it is? What if each attempt was actually a note in your symphony, teaching you exactly what you need to hear? Consider the violinist learning a new piece. They don't expect perfection on the first try, or the 10th, or even the 100th. Each attempt, each failure, brings them closer to the music they're meant to make. Your journey of self-trust works the same way. Lisa discovered this truth in an unexpected place, her kitchen. After years of saying, "I can't cook," she started with just one recipe. Not a feast, not a 5-course meal. One simple dish. The first time was terrible, she laughed. The second time was bad. But by the 10th time, something clicked. Not just in the cooking. In me. What symphony are you afraid to start playing? Here's a truth about self-trust that most people miss. It's not built on perfect performance. It's built on gentle returns. Like waves returning to shore, it's not about never pulling back. It's about always coming back. Think about these moments of return. When you slip into old patterns, but catch yourself sooner. When you forget your morning routine, but start again tomorrow. When you break a promise to yourself, but make a new one. When you lose your way, but find your compass again. Each return is a note in your symphony of self-trust. Rachel understood this when rebuilding her relationship with exercise. Instead of promising herself 2 hours at the gym, she committed to putting on her running shoes every morning. Just putting them on. Some days, that's all she did. Other days, she found herself walking, then jogging, then running. The shoes became my way of trusting myself again, she shared. They became my daily promise I could keep. What simple promise could become your daily note of trust? Here's something powerful about building momentum. It doesn't require you to know the entire symphony in advance. You just need to play one true note, then listen for the next one. Think about trust for a moment. Not just self-trust, but any trust. It's built in the small moments. When you say you'll do something and you do it. When you honor your own boundaries. When you listen to your quiet inner voice. When you choose self-respect over instant gratification. James discovered this while rebuilding his life after burnout. I used to make these grand plans for change, he told me. Now, I just promise myself one thing. 5 minutes of silence each morning. Sometimes 5 becomes 50. Sometimes it's just 5. But it's my daily reminder that I can trust myself to show up. Your symphony of self-trust doesn't need to be perfect to be beautiful. In fact, it's the imperfections, the hesitations, the wrong notes, the moments of silence that make it uniquely yours. Remember, every great musician started with one note. Every symphony has its quiet passages. Every masterpiece includes moments of rest. Every journey of trust begins with a single promise kept. Chapter 10. Dancing with Uncertainty, Embracing the Unknown. Have you ever watched leaves dancing in wind? They don't fight the breeze, they move with it, creating patterns more beautiful than any choreographed dance. What if uncertainty in your life could be like those leaves? Not something to fear, but something to dance with. Meet Eleanor. She had her next 30 years planned out in meticulous detail. Career milestones, relationship goals, even the age she'd buy her first house. Then life did what life does best. It changed the music. Her company downsized, her relationship ended, and suddenly her carefully crafted plan felt like a script for a play that was no longer running. I felt lost, she told me, her voice soft but steady, until I realized that being lost might be exactly where I needed to be. What if the uncertainty you're feeling right now isn't a sign that you're doing life wrong, but an invitation to dance with possibility? Think about your favorite adventures, the ones that really changed you. Did they follow a perfect plan? Or did they unfold in unexpected ways, leading you to places more interesting than any you could have imagined? Here's a truth about uncertainty that most people miss. It's not the opposite of security. It's the birthplace of possibility. Like an artist facing a blank canvas, the emptiness that frightens you is also the space where anything can happen. Consider these moments of beautiful uncertainty. The pause between deciding to change and knowing how. The space between letting go and finding something new. The quiet moment before taking a risk. The breath between questions and answers. Each is an invitation to dance with what could be. Thomas found his dance with uncertainty when his 20-year career in finance suddenly felt empty. I kept waiting for clarity, he shared. I wanted a sign pointing exactly where to go next. Then I realized maybe clarity comes through movement, not before it. What movement are you waiting to make until you have certainty? Here's something powerful about embracing uncertainty. It doesn't require you to be fearless. It just asks you to be curious. Like a child taking their first steps, you don't need to know where the path leads to take the next step. Maria discovered this while rebuilding her life after moving to a new country. Instead of trying to recreate her old life, she started asking different questions. Not how can I make this like before, But what's possible here that wasn't possible before? Your relationship with uncertainty can transform when you start seeing it as a creative force rather than a threatening one. Each unanswered question is an opportunity for discovery. Each unclear path is an invitation to explore. Each moment of not knowing is a chance to grow. Each fear of the unknown is a door to courage. Remember, the butterfly doesn't know what transformation feels like until it happens. The seed doesn't know what blooming feels like until it blooms. Some things can only be learned by doing them. What if uncertainty isn't your enemy, but your ally? What if not knowing isn't a barrier, but a bridge to becoming who you're meant to be? Just as a jazz musician doesn't need to know every note before starting to play, you don't need to have everything figured out to begin your dance with uncertainty. Sometimes, the most beautiful melodies come from the spaces between the notes. Chapter 11. The Art of Gentle Persistence. Building Your New Reality. Have you ever watched a river carve its path through rock? It doesn't happen in a day, or a week, or even a year. It happens through gentle, persistent flow. Each drop of water might seem insignificant, but together, they reshape mountains. Let me introduce you to Grace. She used to believe that transformation required force, pushing, striving, grinding. No pain, no gain, she'd tell herself, launching into yet another exhausting cycle of extreme change followed by inevitable burnout. Then one day, while watching her grandmother tend her garden, she noticed something profound. My grandmother never rushed, Grace shared. She just showed up, day after day, tending her plants with such gentle care. And her garden, it was magnificent. What if the change you're seeking doesn't need your force, but your faithfulness? Consider the bamboo farmer. For the first 4 years after planting, they see almost no visible growth. But they keep watering, keep tending, keep believing. In the 5th year, the bamboo can grow up to 90 feet in just 6 weeks. Why? Because for all those silent years, it was building an elaborate root system capable of supporting explosive growth. What roots are you building in your silent seasons? Here's a truth about lasting change that most people miss. It's not about intensity. It's about consistency. Like a steady beat of your heart, it's the quiet, consistent actions that keep your transformation alive. Think about these moments of gentle persistence. The morning you choose to start again, even after missing a day. The small act of self-care when you least feel like it. The quiet yes to your dreams when doubt whispers no. The continued step forward when progress seems invisible. Each is a drop of water, slowly but surely carving your new path. Alexandra discovered this while rebuilding her health after years of neglect. I kept waiting to feel motivated enough to make big changes, she explained. Then I realized, maybe I just needed to do small things, consistently, whether I felt motivated or not. What small action could you commit to, regardless of motivation? Here's something powerful about gentle persistence. It doesn't ask you to be perfect. It just asks you to be present. Like tending a garden. Some days you do more, some days less, but you keep showing up. Consider these principles of gentle persistence. Progress isn't always visible. Small actions compound over time. Consistency matters more than intensity. Every return to the path is a victory. Michael embodied this when rebuilding his creative life. Instead of demanding masterpieces, he committed to drawing one simple sketch each day. Some are terrible, he laughed. But that's not the point. The point is showing up, making marks, staying in the conversation with my creativity. Your transformation is like a garden. Some seeds sprout quickly, others take time. Every season serves a purpose. Growth happens underground first. Patience is as important as effort. Remember, the mighty oak doesn't grow faster by pulling on its leaves. Your transformation, too, has its own natural rhythm. Your job isn't to force it, but to create the conditions for growth, and then show up day after day with gentle persistence. What if the very things you think are holding you back, your slowness, your need for time, your tendency to move carefully, are actually your greatest strengths in creating lasting change? Chapter 12. The The Symphony of Setbacks, Finding Strength in Struggle. Have you ever listened closely to a piece of music? Really listened. Notice how the dissonance makes the harmony sweeter, how the silence makes the sound more powerful. What if your setbacks were like those necessary notes in your life's symphony? Let me tell you about James. He saw every setback as a failure, every struggle as proof he wasn't good enough. Until one rainy Tuesday, sitting in his car after losing a job he'd spent 5 years building towards, he heard a piano piece on the radio. The musician hit a wrong note, but instead of stopping, they wove it into something beautiful. "That's when it hit me," James said, his eyes bright with realization. Maybe my setbacks weren't endings. Maybe they were just unexpected notes in my melody. What if every setback in your life isn't a stop sign, but a sign to listen more closely to the music you're meant to make? Think about a master chef tasting their dish. Sometimes adding a bitter note actually enhances the sweetness. Sometimes what seems like a mistake becomes the signature element that makes the recipe extraordinary. Consider these moments of beautiful disruption. The relationship that ended, leading you back to yourself. The career setback that opened an unexpected door. The plan that failed, making space for something better. The struggle that taught you what you're really made of. Each one a note in your symphony of growth. Sophie found this truth while rebuilding her life after bankruptcy. "I kept trying to erase that chapter of my story," she shared, "until I realized that chapter wasn't just about loss. It was where I learned my own strength." What chapter of your story are you trying to erase instead of embrace? Here's something powerful about setbacks. They don't just show you what needs to change. They show you what's unshakable within you. Like a storm that reveals which trees have the deepest roots, challenges show you what you're truly made of. Consider the pearl. Born from an irritation. Shaped by pressure. Beautiful because of its struggle. Valuable because of its response to adversity. Your setbacks can be like that. Not just obstacles to overcome, but the very elements that make your story unique and beautiful. Marcus understood this while recovering from health challenges. "I used to see my body's limits as my enemy," he reflected. "Now I see them as teachers. Every setback shows me something about what I need, what matters, what's worth fighting for." Remember, every symphony has its minor keys. Every story has its plot twists. Every journey has its detours. Every transformation has its challenges. What if your struggles aren't punishments but preparations? What if each setback is actually setting you up for something better than you could have planned? Like a phoenix rising from ashes, sometimes you need the fire of challenge to reveal your true strength. Not because you're broken, but because you're becoming. Chapter 13. The Echo of Authenticity. Finding your true voice. Have you ever stood in an empty room and spoken, just to hear your voice bounce back to you? There's something powerful about that echo, pure, unfiltered, completely yours. But how often do we let our true voice get buried under the noise of shoulds and expectations? Meet Olivia. From the outside, her life looked picture perfect. Executive position, designer wardrobe, luxury apartment. But every morning, as she applied her makeup with precision, she felt like she was painting on a mask rather than revealing her true face. "I had perfected the art of being who everyone needed me to be," she whispered, "until I forgot who I actually was." When was the last time you heard your own true voice, unmuffled by the expectations of others? Think about children at play. They don't worry about looking silly or sounding wrong. They simply are. Somewhere along the way, we learned to filter, to edit, to polish our natural expressions until they became almost unrecognizable. Here's a truth about authenticity that might surprise you. It's not about finding yourself. It's about returning to yourself. Like a river finding its natural course after years of artificial damming. Consider these moments of authentic resonance. When you laugh without thinking about how you sound. When words flow from your heart without editing. When you feel completely at home in your own skin. When your actions align perfectly with your inner truth. Each one is an echo of your authentic voice. Benjamin discovered this while teaching his first photography class. For years, He tried to emulate the polished style of famous photographers. But one day, showing students his imperfect personal photos, he saw their eyes light up with recognition. Those messy, honest shots spoke to them more than any of my technical masterpieces, he realized. They weren't seeing my skill. They were seeing my soul. What part of your soul are you hiding behind perfection? Here's something powerful about finding your authentic voice. It doesn't require you to become someone new. It asks you to stop pretending to be someone you're not. Like taking off tight shoes you've worn too long, it feels both uncomfortable and incredibly relieving. Think about these layers of pretense. The professional mask we wear at work. The social face we show on media. The perfect image we try to maintain. The strength we fake when we're hurting. What would it feel like to let just one of those masks slip? Elena found out when she stopped dyeing her gray hair. It wasn't just about the hair, she shared. It was about finally saying, "This is me, all of me, and that's enough." Remember, your authentic voice might be rusty from disuse. Your true self might feel foreign at first. Your natural way might seem too simple. Your honest expression might feel too raw. But like a bell that's been muffled, once you let your true voice ring out, its clarity can surprise you. What if the very things you've been trying to fix about yourself are actually your greatest gifts? What if your flaws are actually your fingerprints, the unique marks that make you irreplaceably you? Chapter 14. The Dance of Boundaries, Honoring Your Sacred Space. Have you ever watched the ocean meet the shore? There's a beautiful rhythm there. The waves know exactly where to flow and when to retreat. Nature understands something we often forget. Boundaries aren't walls, they're rhythms of respect. Let me tell you about Maya. She was everyone's go-to person, always available, always helping, always saying yes. I thought being kind meant having no boundaries, she told me, exhaustion etched in her voice. Until my therapist asked me something that changed everything. What if your no is as sacred as your yes? When was the last time you honored your own limits without feeling guilty? Think about a beautiful garden. What makes it thrive isn't just the nurturing. It's the fence that protects it, the careful pruning that gives it shape, the boundaries that allow it to flourish in its own space. Here's a truth about boundaries that most people miss. They're not about keeping others out. They're about keeping yourself intact. Like the skin that protects your body, boundaries don't isolate you. They define you. Consider these moments of boundary wisdom. When you say no without explaining yourself. When you leave space in your calendar just for you. When you honor your feelings without apologizing. When you choose your peace over others' expectations. Each one is a note in your symphony of self-respect. David discovered this while rebuilding his creative practice. I used to think I had to be available 24/7 to be successful, he shared. Then I realized my best work comes from my protected space, from the times I dare to be unavailable. What spaces in your life are crying out for protection? Here's something powerful about setting boundaries. It's not just about saying no to others. It's about saying yes to yourself. Like clearing weeds from a garden, each boundary creates space for something beautiful to grow. Think about these sacred spaces. Your morning routine before the world rushes in. Your quiet moments of reflection. Your creative time without interruption. Your rest without guilt. Each deserves its own gentle fence, its own loving protection. Sarah learned this while healing from burnout. I thought setting boundaries would make people love me less, she admitted. Instead, it taught them how to love me better. Remember, every garden needs its fence. Every river needs its banks. Every song needs its rests. Every heart needs its sanctuary. What if your boundaries aren't selfish, but sacred? What if saying no isn't about rejection, but about direction, pointing your energy toward what truly matters? Consider the moon. It doesn't apologize for its phases. It doesn't rush its darkness or dim its light. It simply honors its own rhythm, and in doing so, moves oceans. Rachel embodied this when she started her own business. Instead of being available all hours like other consultants, she set clear working hours. It was terrifying at first, she said, but something magical happened. Clients didn't respect me less. They respected me more. Your boundaries can be like that. clear without being harsh, firm without being rigid, strong without being cold, protective without being isolating. Chapter 15, The Alchemy of Growth, Transforming Pain into Power. Have you ever touched a pearl and wondered at its story? How something as irritating as a grain of sand becomes something so beautiful. What if your pain could transform in the same way? Not through denying it, but through embracing its potential for transformation. Meet Alexandra. She carried her past hurts like heavy stones in her pockets, each one weighing her down. I thought healing meant forgetting, she told me, fingers tracing old scars. Until I realized, healing isn't about erasing the wounds, it's about transforming them into wisdom. When was the last time you looked at your pain not as your enemy, but as your teacher? Think about how diamonds are formed, through pressure, through heat, through time. Not despite these conditions, but because of them. What if your challenges were creating something equally precious within you? Here's a truth about transformation that most don't understand. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about alchemizing your experiences into gold. Like a master artist who doesn't waste any color, even the darkest shades have their purpose in creating the masterpiece. Consider these moments of inner alchemy. When past heartbreak becomes deep empathy. When old fears become new strength. When mistakes become wisdom. When wounds become gifts. Each is a transformation waiting to be recognized. Michael found this truth while rebuilding after loss. I kept trying to get back to who I was before, he shared, eyes distant with memory. Then one day I realized, maybe I'm not meant to go back. Maybe this pain is sculpting me into something new. What if your pain isn't your prison, but your cocoon? Here's something powerful about emotional alchemy. It doesn't ask you to deny your pain. It invites you to use it as raw material for something meaningful. Like a potter working with clay, sometimes the most beautiful vessels are shaped by hands that know both gentleness and pressure. Consider these elements of transformation. The courage to face what hurts. The wisdom to learn from what breaks. The strength to rebuild from ruins. The grace to help others through similar storms. Isabella discovered this while healing from betrayal. I thought trust would never be possible again, she admitted. But as I healed, I found something unexpected. My broken trust became a compass, showing me who and what truly deserved my heart. Remember, every scar tells a story. Every breakdown can lead to a breakthrough. Every ending creates space for a beginning. Every pain carries a gift in its hands. What if your struggles aren't punishments, but initiations? What if each difficulty is actually preparing you for a level of wisdom and strength you couldn't access any other way? Think about a forest after a fire. From the ashes, new life emerges, not despite the burning, but because of it. Some seeds actually need the heat of flames to open and grow. Your pain can be like that, a catalyst for growth, a doorway to depth, a bridge to understanding, a path to purpose. Chapter 16, The Legacy of Light, Creating Lasting Change. Have you ever watched the sun rise and realized that this same light has been illuminating mornings since the beginning of time? Each dawn both ancient and new, both timeless and immediate. Your transformation works the same way. Each small choice you make today ripples into tomorrow, creating a legacy that extends far beyond this moment. Let me tell you about Richard. He used to obsess about making big moves and significant changes, always waiting for the perfect moment to transform his life completely. Then his young daughter asked him something profound. "Dad, why do you water the plants every day if they look the same?" "Because," he answered, "they're growing even when we can't see it." In that simple exchange, everything shifted. When was the last time you celebrated the power of your small daily choices? Think about how a lighthouse works. It doesn't shout or demand attention. It simply keeps its light burning, consistently, reliably, night after night. That steady flame becomes a legacy of guidance, of hope, of safe passage home. Here's a truth about lasting change that most people miss. It's not about intensity, it's about consistency. Like the steady drip of water that shapes stone, Your daily choices are quietly carving the masterpiece of your life. Consider these moments of legacy building. The kind word you choose instead of criticism. The moment of patience you grant yourself. The small promise you keep to your heart. The tiny step you take toward your dreams. Each one a brushstroke in the painting of your life. Lauren discovered this while rebuilding her relationship with herself. I kept waiting to feel completely transformed, she shared, until I realized that transformation was happening in every small choice I made, in how I talked to myself, in what I chose to believe, in the tiny moments of self-respect. What small choices could become your lighthouse? Here's something powerful about creating a legacy. It happens in the moments no one else sees. Like a tree growing roots deep underground, your most significant growth often happens in the quiet, unseen spaces of your life. Think about these daily invitations to create your legacy. The morning ritual that centers you. The boundaries you maintain with grace. The self-talk you choose to believe. The dreams you refuse to abandon. Each choice, a seed planted in tomorrow's garden. Marcus understood this while rebuilding his health. I stopped looking for dramatic transformations, he explained. Instead, I asked myself, what tiny choice can I make right now that my future self will thank me for? Remember, every great journey begins with a single step. Every mighty oak was once a small seed. Every masterpiece starts with one stroke. Every legacy builds from daily choices. What if your smallest actions today are actually creating ripples that will touch shores you cannot yet see? What if every moment of choosing yourself, honoring your truth, and taking one more step forward is actually building something far greater than you imagine? Chapter 17. The Dance of Integration, Bringing It All Together. Have you ever watched a master chef in their kitchen? Notice how they don't think about each movement. Everything flows together in a beautiful dance of instinct and intention. That's what we're creating now. Not just a collection of tools, but a natural rhythm of being. Let me tell you about Claire. I have all these techniques, she said, spreading journals and self-help books across her table. Meditation, affirmations, boundaries, gratitude lists, but they feel like separate pieces. How do I make them feel natural, like breathings? That's what this chapter is about. Turning separate notes into a symphony. Think about how water moves from clouds to rain to river to ocean. One continuous flow, each part essential, none separate from the whole. Your transformation can feel this natural, this integrated. Here's a truth about integration that most miss. It's not about doing everything perfectly. It's about letting everything work together naturally. Like a garden where vegetables, flowers, and herbs grow together, supporting each other's growth. Consider these moments of natural integration. When self-care flows into productivity. When boundaries dance with compassion. When courage meets wisdom. When growth embraces rest. Each part supporting the others, none fighting for space. Thomas discovered this while rebuilding his life after burnout. I used to compartmentalize everything, he shared. Meditation was for mornings. Boundaries were for work. Self-care was for weekends. Then I realized everything works better when it flows together. What parts of your journey are asking to be woven together? Here's something powerful about integration. It doesn't add to your load, it lightens it. Like a well-balanced mobile, when everything finds its place, the whole system moves with grace. Think about these rhythms of integration. Morning quiet flowing into productive days. Self-trust building deeper relationships. Personal boundaries creating professional power. Inner peace generating outer success. Sophie found this truth while weaving her spiritual practice into her corporate career. I stopped trying to be two different people, she explained. My meditation practice started informing my leadership style. My gratitude practice transformed my team meetings. Everything became one dance. Remember, every part of you belongs. Every tool has its place. Every practice supports the others. Every aspect of life can work together. What if you didn't need to choose between being powerful and being peaceful? What if your vulnerability could strengthen your leadership? What if every part of you could work together in perfect harmony? Consider the ocean. Waves and depths working together. Storm and calm both essential. Surface and depths in constant communication. Everything part of one great dance. Your journey can be like that, not a collection of separate practices, but one flowing dance of becoming. Maria embodied this when she stopped separating her work self from her real self. I realized authenticity isn't something you schedule, she smiled. It's a way of being that infuses everything. Your integration can look like meditation flowing into action, self-care enhancing productivity, boundaries creating deeper connections, personal growth serving others. Let's pause here and feel how all the pieces we've explored are already dancing together within you. Not perfect, but perfectly in process. Not finished, but beautifully unfolding. Chapter 18. The Horizon of Possibility, Your Continuing Journey. Have you ever stood at the beach and watched where the sky meets the sea? That line you see, the horizon, is both a destination and an illusion. No matter how far you sail, it keeps moving forward, inviting you to grow beyond what you can currently see. Let me share something about Jennifer. After months of transformation, she came to me worried. I've made all these changes, she said, but what if I lose it all? What if I slip back? What if this is as good as it gets? I asked her to look out my office window at the rising sun. Does the sun worry about whether it can rise again tomorrow? Think about a tree in spring. It doesn't doubt whether it can grow new leaves. It doesn't fear that this season's growth might be its last. It simply continues its dance of becoming, trusting in the endless cycle of growth. Here's a truth about continuous growth that most people miss. It's not about reaching a final destination. It's about falling in love with the journey itself. Like a musician who never stops learning new songs, even after mastering their instrument. Consider these horizons of possibility. The strength you haven't yet discovered. The joy you haven't yet experienced. The wisdom you haven't yet uncovered. The love you haven't yet expressed. Each one an invitation to keep becoming. Marcus understood this while continuing his journey of recovery. I used to think healing had an endpoint, he shared. Now I realize it's more like learning to dance. There's always a new step to master, a new rhythm to explore. What new dance is life inviting you to learn? Here's something powerful about continuing growth. It doesn't require you to reject who you've been or even who you are now. Like a spiral staircase, you can revisit the same themes from higher perspectives, seeing new beauty in familiar landscapes. Think about these cycles of growth, each ending becoming a new beginning, each achievement revealing new possibilities, each answer opening new questions, each summit showing new peaks to climb. Sarah discovered this in her artistic journey. I thought once I had my first gallery show, I'd feel complete, she laughed. Instead, it showed me a whole new world of creative possibilities I hadn't even imagined. Remember, every master was once a beginner. Every teacher remains a student. Every ending seeds a new beginning. Every arrival is just a new departure. What if the changes you've made aren't the end of your story, but just the beginning? What if everything you've learned so far is merely the foundation for adventures you can't yet imagine? Consider the night sky, endless in its depth, mysterious in its beauty, inviting in its vastness, constant yet ever-changing. Your journey is like that, infinite in its potential, mysterious in its unfolding, inviting you to keep exploring, keep growing, keep becoming. Rachel embodied this when she stopped seeking a final version of herself. Now, I ask myself each morning, who am I becoming today? What new possibility is life offering me in this moment? Your continuing journey might include deeper layers of self-discovery, higher expressions of your gifts, broader impacts on others, richer experiences of life. This isn't the end of your story. It's simply the end of this chapter. Ahead lies a horizon full of possibilities, each one inviting you to grow beyond what you can currently see or imagine. Epilogue. The echo of your journey. Have you ever stood in a vast canyon and listened to your voice echo back to you? How it comes back changed, not weaker, but richer, carrying traces of every surface it touched. Your journey of transformation is like that echo. Everything you've learned, every step you've taken, returns to you deepened by experience. Think of where you were when we first began this journey together. Remember that first question, that first spark of possibility. You're not the same person who started reading these words. Like a river flowing to the sea, you've been changed by every bend, every rapid, every quiet pool along the way. Let me share something about time. We often think of it as linear. Yesterday, today, tomorrow. But transformation time is different. It spirals, circles back, moves forward in unexpected leaps. The person you were at the beginning of this book is still with you, but now they're accompanied by who you're becoming. Consider these echoes of your journey. The first time you dared to say no. The moment you chose to trust yourself. The day you embraced your authenticity. The time you turned pain into power. Each one has left its mark, creating the symphony that is uniquely you. Here's a truth about endings that most people miss. They're really doorways disguised as destinations. Like a graduation ceremony. It's called a commencement not because something is ending, but because something is beginning. Think about these seeds you've planted. New ways of seeing yourself. Fresh patterns of thinking. Deeper levels of self-trust. Stronger foundations of authenticity. Each one will continue growing long after you close these pages. Remember the stories we shared? Maya finding her voice, Thomas embracing uncertainty, Sarah discovering her strength. Their stories aren't separate from yours. They're reflections of the universal journey of becoming, the same journey you're on right now. Here's something powerful about transformation. It doesn't just change you. It changes how you see change itself. Like climbing a mountain and finally seeing that the horizon isn't a line but a circle containing infinite possibilities. As you stand here at the end of our time together, know this. Every tool we explored is now part of your wisdom. Every insight we shared has taken root in your heart. Every step you took has strengthened your foundation. Every truth you embraced has expanded your possibilities. You're not finishing a book. You're stepping more fully into your story. Consider a symphony's final note, how it doesn't really end, but dissolves into silence, leaving echoes in your mind and heart. This moment is like that note, not an ending, but a threshold. What lies ahead? More growth, more challenges, more victories, more learning. But you're different now. You've learned to dance with uncertainty, to embrace your authenticity, to trust your inner compass. You've discovered that rebuilding yourself isn't about becoming someone new. It's about uncovering who you've always been beneath the layers of who you thought you had to be. Remember, every ending is a beginning. Every arrival is a departure. Every answer opens new questions. Every transformation leads to new possibilities. As you close these pages, know that your real work is just beginning. The tools, insights, and wisdom you've gathered here aren't meant to sit on a shelf. They're meant to live in your choices, your actions, your daily moments of becoming. You are the author of what comes next. You are the artist of your becoming. You are the navigator of your journey. And perhaps, most importantly, you are forever becoming more beautifully, authentically, powerfully yourself. This isn't goodbye. It's simply until we meet again, in the endless dance of growth and transformation that is life itself. Keep becoming. Keep growing. Keep shining. Your journey continues.